Aaron Rodgers stays and Russell Wilson goes. That is just some of the news items this week and actually today. Welcome to the Football Guys Dynasty Show. And Jordan, quarterbacks move the needle, whether that's Dynasty, whether that's the NFL. And here we are, Russell Wilson changing teams and out west in the AFC. So what are some of your big thoughts as Russell Wilson goes to the Broncos?
Yeah, I think this is a ceiling raising, floor raising situation for Russell Wilson. You look at last year, Nathaniel Hackett was the offensive coordinator in Green Bay. I don't think he was calling all the plays, but that a much different system than was going on in Seattle. You look last year, Green Bay was about neutral in terms of their pass run stuff, 16th in terms of dropbacks per game, for example. That was at 38.1. When you look at Seattle, 30th. Right, in terms of 33.9. So just right there, you're looking at a big increase, more than 10% increase in his dropbacks per game. When you actually take that a step forward, that's really good for Russell Wilson because he ranked 4th in terms of fantasy points per dropback last year, even in what was a down year. So I think this is a floor raising situation, and I think it's a ceiling raising situation. And I think we're going to reset this market, and we're going to look at Russell Wilson. I am waiting for an extension. I wonder if they play this out a little bit like the Rams played out Stafford, play this year out, and then he'll have 1 year left and then potentially extend him. There is some risk with Russell Wilson. He's been a little bit inconsistent at the end of seasons, including last year not looking quite the same after the injury. So I could see them potentially waiting it out a year, just make sure that he's, quote, good Russ, and that he hasn't entered some decline phase, and then extend him. Or I could see an extension this year. I think with either scenario, I'd feel more comfortable vaulting him up the board to maybe quarterback 5, quarterback 6, depending on where Watson's at. But until that extension happens, I probably won't get him all the way up there just because there's still that uncertainty. But I think this improves him quite a bit, and he should be over any of the guys that were in last year's class. I think that solidifies this.
Yeah, Russell Wilson is in that Aaron Rodgers zone in terms of, you say, man, if he just got more attempts, right?
Mm-hmm.
If he was just let Russ cook a little more often, let Aaron Rodgers cook, because they're so good on a per attempt and just on a lower volume basis. And yet they've been basically right now, they're number 1 and number 2 of the current active quarterbacks in top 6 finishes. So you're talking about 2 historically productive guys. Russell Wilson has finished as QB1 overall, but when you say the volume could go up, that really is the thing that should get everyone's ears perked up for Dynasty, because Russell Wilson obviously left 2 good receivers there, and Noah Fant exits from Denver, but still a pretty good collection. They brought back Tim Patrick. They've got Cortland Sutton brought back, Jerry Jeudy, Albert O has played well, and now he's going to be viewed as a step-up player with Noah Fant gone. So, and Javonte Williams, and who knows what else they add there. But you mentioned a good thing about the contract, which it's probably going to be a relative non-factor, but like you said, it may not happen right now like everyone assumes he's going to be considered the guy with some big, massive contract. Because the latest thing I saw was NFL salary caps probably going to balloon at some point over the next 2 to 3 years. Mm-hmm. And you may see some of these teams structure contracts in a way, or maybe wait to re-sign these quarterbacks that are going to start getting 40, 45, 50 plus million a year because the salary caps are jumping. They kind of have to wait for that to make more percentage of the cap sense, which I think by 24 it will. We're going to move heavily in that direction. But I agree with you that Russell Wilson has been undervalued, and I think this is going to get the market to correct a little bit. And I guess one other point I would make is situations change, but quarterbacks generally, if they're going to move teams, they change their situation.
Yes.
So this whole we need more volume. Well, what if there was a different coach in Seattle? What if he goes to a different coach? What if Seattle were to add weapons? There's so many different variables, but the quarterback quality is the basis point that we start from here.
Yeah, and I don't think the situation, I mean, you can look at DK Metcalf, you can look at Lockett with Seattle, and they're good players. I don't think the situation is worse, though. I mean, it's...
No, it's not. And that was my point. I mean, Tim Patrick could have a banner year with Russell Wilson as opposed to Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock.
Right. I was thinking about this today in terms of like how to play this. I think everyone's going to chase Jeudy. I think people are going to chase Sutton. I think the Tim Patrick idea is a good one, right? And I think maybe we learn a lesson from last year, which is we don't necessarily know who it's going to help. It could help a variety of different people, and that's the Stafford to the Rams, right? I sort of thought it would help Higbee. I thought maybe Woods, right? It ended up helping Cooper Kupp in a massive way, right? A massive, massive way. That was the connection. So we don't. That's not entirely predictable about what's going to happen, and the market didn't predict that either. So, I think taking different shots at different price points. Tim Patrick later, I think it is an interesting one.
Is he a third round rookie pick? Right? Is Albert Akwebanum 210? Kind of cost there. Is KJ Hamler a mid to late third? And I would just remind folks, Hamler showed something his first year. Obviously, he was basically out of commission the entire year last year, and he has some shades of Tyler Lockett. So to his game as a profile. So all these ancillary guys, and like you mentioned, I think exploring, if you were tepid on Jerry Jeudy and you had shares, which I was, I sold one share today because I found value. And so look for that. I know one angle you always talk about is Jeudy gets you by adding to him how high, right? Can you get someone that is tiers above what maybe even realistic upside is for Jerry Jeudy, but the unknown of there's a lot of weapons. They like, as a franchise, Tim Patrick. They like Cortland Sutton. They brought these guys back. Judy's on a rookie deal. We, at this point, other than the fact that they drafted him in round one, we don't know if he were in a contract year, what they think of Jerry Jeudy. So we know more confidently how they feel about Sutton and Patrick.
Totally. And I think that
and Alberto as well, because they just said, hey, you want Fant? And I know, it shouldn't be a deal breaker when you can get Russell Wilson, but they also freely gave him up, and job well done on the Broncos picking best player available or an Albert O in the 4th round when they already had a first round Noah Fant on their roster.
Totally. I totally agree with that. But we've been saying this for a while. And we look at, I tweeted something about this, totally dumb luck, but I tweeted something about this yesterday, which was we're in the James Harden to Houston quarterback trade market where everyone's underpaying for, right? The teams that are acquiring quarterbacks we're going to look back in 10 years and going to be like, that was the market to buy a quarterback.
Stafford and Wilson. And, if someone gets Deshaun Watson for 2 firsts and some fluffy stuff, what are we doing here? And this is here. Can I just say one of the things, and this is not a comment based on what he did or did not do. This is strictly from an NFL franchise team building standpoint. The thought and idea that you cannot trade for Deshaun Watson right now. If you're getting a discount, any time is a good time to take a shot to change your franchise, especially if you're a team just going out into the wilderness naked and afraid. Like, you have no idea at quarterback what you're doing. And especially if you're in the AFC, you've got no chance. Just none. If you don't have an absolute assassin at the position, you've got, you always say people overplay their probabilities of winning. I would say NFL teams in the AFC, if you don't have a guy, you are overplaying your probabilities of thinking you have a legit chance to make it. Yeah, it's like you just tap Tennessee Titans on the head. You're like, that's really nice, little Timmy. That's not happening. No.
Right.
Defense and run the ball. Okay, let's see how that flies. 2 or 3 straight games in January. Great. Good luck there. Good luck to you, jolly sir. So
totally.
I just think, you can get Watson for that price. Yeah, I think you take that shot. This whole idea that you can't take the shot until everything is clarified. If everything were clarified, I think the price goes up.
Right. And it's still it's still underpriced. Right.
That's the thing about whatever the price is, if it's largely picks.
Right.
We're not talking about trading Aaron Rodgers plus 2 firsts plus whatever for Deshaun Watson because you're getting a decade younger. That's not what we're talking about. The team is going to trade you Tua, or the team is going to trade you Jalen Hurts, or the team is like, if they give you a quarterback in the deal, they're not giving you someone that they view as projectable to that level. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it, and they wouldn't add to it in that fashion. So it just.
Yeah. I actually went through it. We were talking about this at one point, and I went through and I actually looked at all the last 3 draft classes for every team. And I literally went through on Pro Football Reference and just looked at the first round picks from each of and I said, would you trade, like, if you knew what you knew now and you could go back, would you make the deal? Right? Like, what one of these combos of 3 first round picks would you not have done it? And it was all the same. The only answers were guys where they hit on quarterback. Right. And so it was right. It was the Chargers, right, hitting on Herbert. I didn't look going back to Allen and Mahomes, right? It was sort of the 3 years closer than that. But it was Herbert, it was Burrow, right? If you landed a franchise quarterback, it was you. If not, it didn't. You didn't make up the quarterback.
Isn't this like if you were in Superflex or 2 quarterback and you're trading for Mahomes or something? I mean, isn't this the kind of equivalent of like, yes, unless you get that like upper echelon quarterback as part of the deal, then you're just not, it's not going to be a good trade for you.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm gonna cash out on Mahomes. Well, what are you going to get? We played this game last year.
Right.
Did you get enough? Did they get enough? And Jordan would just say, you don't have to, just stop. Not enough.
It's not enough.
Not enough.
It's not enough.
Yeah, it's slightly better than horrible, which was the last one.
Right.
Horrible plus, but no, we didn't get all the way. I thought also one of my takeaways, because Russell Wilson moved, and obviously there's some corresponding moves with Drew Lock and Noah Fant moving to the other side as dynasty relevant players. But I always, this time of year, and we're in free agency or team changing time of season, that in general, people overstate the number of actual significant, notable dynasty entities that are moving teams. And looking at my list of who, just offhanded, that I put in tier 1, tier 2, etc. at the skill positions, the franchised or re-signed players at wide receiver and tight end, which I think arguably were all in tier 1, they all are staying. The 6 that were declared all are staying that we know about right now. Devontae Adams, Chris Godwin, Mike Williams of wide receivers. You've got David Njoku, Dalton Schultz, and Mike Gesicki of tight ends. They are all staying with their team. So all this excitement about moving teams, who's going to benefit, who's left behind, you got to get I think people overstate, whether it's dynasty, NFL fandom, whatever it is, they overstate the probabilities that those players, which are not under contractual control, will actually leave their team, because the incumbent team has the rights first to negotiate, to place. We saw with Chris Godwin and I think 1 or 2 other guys, if they didn't come to a deal, a longer term deal, franchise tag. Mm-hmm. Franchise tag. You're not getting out of here. We're going to pay you a truckload of money. We're still going to negotiate with you, but they don't leave. So this is different than Allen Robinson coming off a pretty poor year and a pretty poor, couple of years. And he may change teams. Or Juju Smith-Schuster may change teams, or Evan Ingram or whatever. These are way different profiles than guys like Mike Gesicki, who's been largely productive, Dalton Schultz, Devontae Adams, Chris Godwin. These are largely different profiles. But I just think in general, people need to assume status quo until we are hit over the head and they are in fact leaving, and they in fact were traded or actually have signed with another team, because it doesn't happen all that often with relevant names.
Yeah, and I think the big one is, right, you hit it on the head. 3 for 60 for Mike Williams was that. I almost fell out of my chair at Starbucks when I saw that. That was a big number. I didn't expect that number. But the other one,
guy that is like 1 season in the top 24. Right. Totally. He's been a categorical Devontae Parker disappointment through 4 years of his career.
Right. Yeah, he's more. I mean, he's probably worth more as an ancillary piece to them than he is in dynasty or fantasy, but still, that's a lot of money. But you could afford it when you have a rookie.
Amari Cooper is getting paid about that, and he might get cut.
Right, totally.
And Mike Williams is like, "Come on in."
They showed him walking through the parking lot. I was like, he was all happy. I was like, yeah, I'd be happy too. The interesting part about Rodgers too is this has been going on for a while, and about is he staying? Is he going? Whatever. They're in such good shape, and it's interesting because Adams has slipped in price. Rodgers had slipped in price. I mean, Aaron Jones is criminally undervalued
on the assumption that they're all leaving, mass exodus. And you know what's going to happen though is that, and I had some questions today. Is Jordan Love a buy? And I was like, well, hold on. Because you know when he's going to be the cheapest? Week 1.
Mhm.
If he's
Mhm.
not traded or something, when he's an absolute true backup, yet again, and Aaron Rodgers has signed, whether it's 2, 3, 4-year, whatever contract, that's when Jordan Love will be the cheapest. Not today, because there's still the prospect of he's a week 1 starter somewhere this year. So this is not the bottom. This is not the bottom. In season last year was a bottom-like moment because Superflex, he was getting thrown around. But in season is the bottom. It's not now. It's not April 15th. It's not June 4th. It's you got to get all the way home to the season and he's not traded.
Yeah.
That's the bottom.
Yeah. I just got to say, in defense of Jordan Love, he doesn't deserve the grief that he gets. Right. And
he's Schrodinger's cat. We still don't
Right.
know if he's good or bad.
Right. Yeah. He gets so much grief and he gets so much of the, and I didn't think it was a bad pick, to be totally honest with you. I mean, this is the fun part about like looking at these teams and trying to apply it to Dynasty. What did they do? It was Rodgers was somewhat entering a decline phase, it looks like, by all marks. I mean, everyone from Dynasty thinks that we're so smart now when they were writing him off at that point, right? I mean, let's go back 2 years and think about where he was, which was everyone was putting dirt on his grave. I mean, someone we know said that he had died. Right? I mean,
he threw only 25 touchdowns over 2 picks.
Right.
He's done.
Right. And so that's where we were. Like, let's reset the clock. And what do? They spend a late first, right? Not dissimilar, and it's the same range as Philly did with Jalen Hurts.
I think it was because, and we've seen it perpetually from then onward, they refuse to draft wide receivers.
Yeah.
And or tight ends. I think that's the part that it still bugs me. They bring back Devontae Adams. They bring back Aaron Rodgers. The notable pick they've made is Amari Rodgers. Really? So this is going to be really interesting how you mentioned, I mean, the cap situation, not great. And Lazard and Marcus Valdes-Scantling, free agents, and those might be completely good riddance on other rosters, but those are their number 2 and number 3 best guys. So I don't know what their plan is, but I think it was the A.J. Dillon pick, and especially if you're bringing back Aaron Jones, and then it's the Jordan Love pick where it's like, so you're getting to the end game and you keep you're making these allegiances to Aaron Rodgers. That's all great, but apparently you didn't know that years ago that you wanted to stick with an all-timer. Apparently you didn't know that.
I mean, right. I think it's fair to say that you at that point there was uncertainty about him. Right. And we could go back and we all did it. Right. I mean, I don't think you and I did. We were sort of on the Aaron Rodgers bandwagon, but we were in the minority in terms of like, he's still a great quarterback.
But a late first, like what you're saying, a late first at quarterback when you have 5 years of control. And even if they are, and Jordan Love might set a record for fewest passes thrown as a first round quarterback through X number of years.
Right.
But even if he is a backup through his entire rookie contract, and if he holds, I remember the Patriots did this with Garoppolo, right? They drafted him in the second, and they had him for a while, and I think they sold him for a second or somewhere around there. You got your money back, but yeah, you used him for X number of years at a low price. If Jordan Love is the backup, and then someday they trade him for a second, you had him for that entire time of who knows if Aaron Rodgers goes down in August, how does this play out? It may be the actual linchpin they needed. So but Jordan Love, I would say he has a wide range of potential outcomes still. And I think a lot of people stunt him and view him as there's no upside there, which look at the set of circumstances. Aaron Rodgers was sitting clipboard holding behind Brett Favre for multiple years. And I know that's just heresy because we know what Rodgers became.
Right.
But Favre was one of the greatest. Just ask John Madden. So I just think Jordan Love was a guy viewed as big time arm talent coming out, a little bit scattershot. We've heard these stories that were successes out of what? Mahomes, Josh Allen, others of just saying,
right.
They're raw, but the tools are there. Few guys can spin it like these guys.
Right.
So again, hopefully he's learning something. He's learning something with all this time because he's still an unknown. But I just think in Superflex, a lot of people are assuming it's not going to happen. But hey, sitting behind and being viewed by your franchise not as good as Aaron Rodgers, doesn't mean that you can't play. Doesn't mean that you can be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL someday.
Right.
High bar.
Yeah. High bar.
Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 94 of the Football Guys Dynasty Show. And man, some of these trades this week, Jordan, we were actually getting, what I love is now people are starting to position themselves in rookie drafts. We're behind the NFL Combine here, and that's really the peak of when people start getting excited. Obviously, the NFL Draft is the pinnacle of that. We're about 6-7 weeks away, but the Combine is where you start putting workout numbers, blazing times, and the comps are even more out of control, more saucy, more unbelievable, more Hall of Fame like. And got a couple deals here where folks have moved off of 101. And before I ask you about these trades, let me just ask, 101 as an asset, whether it's this year or any year, I mean, what's your threshold for this early in the process versus just holding it all the way to the end and much closer and post NFL draft before selling or legitimately shopping the pick hard?
It's a top 20 asset. I think at this point, when you look at the pick, historically it's 20 overall. Is this down class? Maybe. Is this class? I mean, look, every year's the same, right? I mean, we can say the class is down, right? It goes through cycles, and then all of a sudden we see guys run fast in tights, and everyone's all excited, right? So now we're in the excitement phase of Dynasty Fantasy Football, the rookie drafts. So I don't think the price of 101 is going to go down, right? And if you have this deal now, right? If you have any deal for 101 and people are coming to try and trade for it, it's not going to go away, right? Like their interest in that pick is not going to go down, right? It is only really going to go up, and that puts good situation.
Well,
right?
I remember that one
situation.
Class was it 19 with Josh Jacobs and N'Keal Harry. That's one that didn't necessarily go up because I know a lot of people 101 and especially 102 were looking to bail out of that class. So that would be one just offhanded I can think of where you took a shot. Now, again, you took Jacobs at 1. It's obviously that's a good outcome. Things have worked well. So there was an answer to the test. But at the time of sitting there May 1st, not a lot of people were excited about that outcome compared to other ones where you may have had a lot more clarity and a lot more perceived upside and profile there out of the 101. So these were both FFPC 1 quarterback. So quarterback's not going to be a factor for that 101. We've got 101 and 111 traded for 103 and 105.
Yeah, I mean, I think the gap between 101 and 103 is going to be pretty big, right? I mean, if we'll see, but if Bryce Hall goes, if he's going to be a first round running back, which I think isn't out of the range of outcomes, I think the difference between that and 103 is going to be pretty large, especially if it's going to be a receiver. That would sort of be my initial take on it.
Well, and receiver and FFPC, which kind of tightens the screws, right? I mean,
correct.
You can't have 7-8 wide. Well, some people do, but you shouldn't have 7-8 wide receivers. And if you don't get that year 1 pop, it's a pretty big matzo ball because now you're sitting there to keep 14 positional guys just less than 12 months later.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then the other one. So yeah, for me, it's 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. Those should be viewed as big moves, especially because Breece Hall pretty much checked all the boxes but now the one thing is we've seen guys like Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, they've had very good profiles, and yet they didn't sniff round 1. So the NFL is being really fickle. And so wanting round 1, it hasn't been in recent years the guys we've typically thought of. Josh Jacobs got there, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's been a moving target and not necessarily the profiles that we've thought of to get home that maybe we have chosen. The other one is 101 for 105 and a 23 first.
Yeah, this one's interesting. And again, it's 1 quarterback, so you have less. I think you have lesser of a net trying to protect you in that fall, right? So if this is a late first in 2020, in 2023, I think it's that hurts more in this. I mean, I think this is kind of the deal that I was talking about, that I don't think that this goes away, right? If 105 wants to do this right now, I'd be surprised if they don't want to do it further along the line.
Do you think if you're trading 101 that you really shouldn't do it for picks? that you should it can have picks in it, but do you think it should center around an auto start player?
I mean, especially in FFPC, right? I mean, that's kind of
because your lineup is like half your roster,
right? And so you don't have a ton of ability to stash someone, and develop them. You just don't. It's a different. You have to play the game, right?
So it sounds like if you're on the opposite side of this, just throw the kitchen sink, right? Like I got 5, 11, 202, 207. Like just throw everything and see if you can get to 1.
Right?
Can I get to 1? And I've got a guy that might be my 10th best player. I'll throw all those things to get 101 to consolidate down to one centric spot and profile. And like you said, it's looking like a running back at this point, which optimizes the spot. You get a 21-year-old teaser. Breece Hall's 21, and then and now you've got the profile, at least of this year, projected post combine, and all the factors of, like you said, chance to go first round, but even if he goes second round, you've got the profile. Now, a Clyde Edwards-Helaire situation could occur where Hall's not the first running back off the board. We saw that with Jonathan Taylor, and so. But that still doesn't change the fact that you go back to that class and Jonathan Taylor, if you had the answers to the test, Taylor was the 101 if you were to redraft today, and it wouldn't be particularly close. But I think the 103, 105 is a lot better of a deal just to compare these two, just because taking that first where it really is random, gosh, that's got to be high. And could you not trade 105 for a future first? You absolutely could. Plus, I mean, probably 2 future firsts for 105 or a player and that one to me truly is bailing because you're moving all the way back to 5.
I view that future first as 105, right? When you sort of randomize it, that's what it turns out to be. So if you just look at these 103 and 105, right, you're basically trading for 105 twice, essentially.
Well, the problem with 5 is you're probably clearly looking. You're going to miss out on the top 2 running backs, maybe the top 3. You might miss on all the guys drafted in the second round for running backs, and now you're really pinpointing it on a wide receiver. And a wide receiver that probably you don't even feel great that you made that pick unless they finish in the top 45 in year 1. As one threshold that I use that's a lot more sticky than if you finish at 50 or 55 or whatever. So, you got to be very, very careful when you're high up. And if you're at 2 or 3, I've seen some pretty cheap trade ups. Not necessarily 3 plus 5, but if you're at 2, I've seen people take a second to trade up from 2 to 1. And to sit in the bird dog seat is definitely one to explore this time if you can just move up that one spot. Give yourself that flexibility. All right, we are moving off of FFPC. We've got a 12-team, 1 quarterback, and this is trading young profiles for picks for the prospect of the profiles being as good. So you've got Cam Akers, Brandon Aiyuk for 107 and a 23 first.
So this is... I'm surprised at how far Aiyuk has fallen.
Is this picks gone wrong?
What's that?
Is this picks gone wrong?
I'm surprised at how actually I think that the pick side of this could be closer than we actually think, because I'm surprised at how far Brandon Aiyuk has fallen in actual drafts. He's well into the double digits. You're looking like 10th, 11th, 12th round of Superflex drafts.
Well, people like Trey Lance. It's interesting. So Trey Lance is going to be a massive breakout star, and Brandon Aiyuk is going to be left by the road for vultures.
Yeah,
got it.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And again, I like the shenanigans of this whole thing is just it can be a little mind numbing to be on him, right? So. And then you look at Akers and you say, all right, is Akers, and Akers has fallen. Like some of the roses, the shine has come off that rose as well. He was like PFF's worst graded running back when he returned, right? And so if you're sort of looking at this and you're like, all right, like I've got 2 guys that, maybe in a best case they're pretty good. I think in a worst case the picks could trounce them. So I think that both of these guys have a very wide range of outcomes. And maybe if it was a little bit different players in this range, if it was ETN or someone like that instead of Akers, I might think a little bit differently. But I think this is an interesting, this is all about what you value in terms of risk. I think this is entirely a risk thing because there's a lot of risk on the player side of this in particular.
Yeah, and I think the Akers thing is differently. So it was first, the guy's a cyborg. Wow, he's coming back from an Achilles. and then he doesn't show that well, yet comes back in a historic time frame. And it's the optics. I've said it before. Out of sight, out of mind with an injury is worse than playing with the injury, because Devontae Adams playing on a bum wheel, a sprained ankle for much of that supposedly has to be a breakout season, and everyone brandishes him as a complete bust. And so him playing the optics of the Zeke, playing through an injury for a large chunk of a season, bad optics. Mm-hmm. So I just think that a lot of times you get that negative connotation there. And Akers, like you, I've been a little surprised to see how far he's fallen when he was considered 12 months ago the blessed one and a massive breakout, and then he has an injury that would debilitate anyone, and he comes back and actually plays at the end of the year and doesn't look great. So right. I think that maybe that reaffirms they wouldn't let him come back if they didn't have confidence in him, and then he doesn't produce. So I kind of agree with you that Aiyuk, has not been given a pass, with his early production there.
Which is funny because Jerry Jeudy has, right? All the people that have been given a pass, and Aiyuk is actually
5 from Sunday. Exactly. That 23 first, though, is hyper insulated. The 107, I'd probably be looking to maybe go somewhere else with that pick. But it's what it represents, right? I mean, you could get a better lineup viable wide receiver than Brandon Aiyuk with the 107, which is always the thing we kind of bandy about is, well, what does that pick mean? What could it do? I think this is closer than it seems. And Darrell Henderson is still there. I would just remind folks the assumption that it's going to be Cam Akers 25 times a game next season. We will see. I know our own Matt Waldman, not the greatest vision on Cam Akers, and it kind of seems that way. When he has a runway, he can go, but finding the runway on his own laterally and making 2 or 3 cuts to get there and do things on his own, not exactly his forte.
Yeah, concerning. Let's just pivot this for a second. 107 and a 23 first. Does that get you McCaffrey? Pretty close to it?
Probably, yes.
You know what I mean? So that would be the other way. I mean, that's how I would view this, because I'm not sure Aiyuk and Akers get you McCaffrey, but I think the picks, right? If
picks are liquid and players are not. Players are fickle. Right. Fickle business.
Right. So that's I might not necessarily sit and make those picks, but I'd be going, you have the ability to go big game hunting, and that would sort of be
right. And frankly, 23 first, even if you just have your own right now, 23 firsts are freaking sledgehammers in the marketplace of what people think about those picks. I do think 22 picks are coming around. I like all the metrics that I use. It actually looks top to bottom pretty average, an average year. And I don't think that's the perception, but maybe it's reversing with all those big time wide receiver workouts with Breece Hall, testing so well. And he was already on the 101 or high first track, but him helping himself as running back one, all these things are going to help. Malik Willis maybe being drafted in the top 5 or 6. That would help in Superflex drafts, at least at the top. So I do think this class is coming around, and it'll be interesting to see if the market comes up to that neutral sort of level. But actually, the next trade is a good one because we haven't talked Calvin Ridley. So that's one that got completely buried with all the news of the past 24 hours. And so we have an FFPC, and this is after the Calvin Ridley announcement that he was going to be suspended for the next year. And so the next time he will play a game, I think it's 28.7 years old in 2023. So Calvin Ridley and a 23 second in FFPC for Alexander Mattison and 112. And I know you have some thoughts on Calvin Ridley because I saw some comments from you regarding Ridley and the wildly different marketplace he's going to have from league to league.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I tend to view these very simply. If you're in a situation like this, try not to lose a core asset and figure out a way when to best time it to use him as to get a core asset, right? You're taking a loss on him. You just have to understand that. I think it's incredible that we've made it 34 minutes and 40 seconds into this podcast or YouTube show and podcast. And the news this week has been so crazy that it buried a player getting suspended for a year for betting on football, right? That's the level that this week kind of accelerated midday today. So that's that. I wonder if you can do better than this. And maybe it's not today. Maybe it's not in April. Maybe it's not in
Better
August.
than this for what side?
I think you can get more than this for Ridley. And whether that is because here's the deal. If you find yourself contending in October, if you find yourself contending in November, and you've got Ridley, you have the ability to then use him as an asset to someone that is not contending. The dirty little secret about that is teams with really good wide receivers tend to not carry you as far as you think they will. And so what can happen is you can actually get a situation where you have receivers on the market that are available. Like last year, Devontae Adams was gettable in leagues, and despite being dominant, because the rest of the team, like he couldn't carry a team that far, right? So, and I did those types of deals, right? That's a deal that I think is there, right? Ridley's an asset for that, right? You can use to add to Ridley, later on, right? And so that's the deal that I would tend to look at as I do this. I mean, if you just sort of look at this and say, all right, Mattison and the picks are kind of even, and then it's 112 for Ridley, that's a way to do it. And then maybe you can pivot 112. You can do something like that. I think that's probably, there's been worse deals that have done for Ridley. The question I would have for you is, can you pull a Ben Simmons deal? Right? Because can you just wait instead of saying, listen, I'm going to take my loss now? Like, listen, I'm going to use him as an asset. And I'm going to refuse to take a loss now. I'm going to wait on it. That would be, do you have the stomach for that? Are you going to bail in August? Right? That's the question that I would have. You have to have a serious conversation with it. If you want to bail, this isn't a horrible way to bail.
Well, here's the tough part. It's FFPC. So this is pre-cuts. And we haven't really discussed a player like this that is suspended. And I'll be fair, I don't know the answer to this question. Is suspended IR eligible in FFPC?
That's a good question.
Because if the answer is yes, then it makes it easy, because all he has to do is make your top 14 skill players. Then after that, or at some point, you're just putting them on the IR, out of sight, out of mind, and accelerate to 2023 at a minimum if you don't make a move like you outlined there. If he is not, and you have to carry him on the active,
yes,
through the cut period and through tight stuff all the way, I think the pressure on him, on that canister, is very strong right now in the next few weeks, depending on the look of your team, because he's going to be a non-usable, non-fungible wide receiver. And if he, and like, I just think getting to the season, and we know there's backup running backs everywhere on the waiver wire, and you're going to give up one of those every single moment of the entire season for Calvin Ridley, a guy that until the next September is not even sniffing possibly playing or affecting your team. So it's tough. And let's not sweep under the rug the fact that he took time away for his, mental state. So that goes beyond the suspension. It goes beyond, there's more things going on here that I think we're going to not underplay, but we're going to minimize, because the talk is about the gambling and the suspension.
Mm-hmm.
So, and all that means for the NFL purposes, but him as well. So so for me, it's a little tougher, because we're going to take the Michael Thomas sort of thing, right? Like, how long has it been since we've seen, quote unquote, Calvin Ridley? It wasn't this year. It's not going to be this coming year. That's going to be 2 years where we haven't seen wide receiver one, top 18, 20 producing wide receiver, Calvin Ridley. So be careful, because you're going to get all the way to 2023, and it's been quite some time. 2020 was the last time you saw Calvin Ridley producing. That goes beyond what you were talking about as, just as an asset and what he could do for you in the future. But I think those are critical questions that, like I said, I'm not sure on the suspended status. I can't recall Will Fuller, if he was on, when he was suspended, was he on IR and FFPC?
FFPC, you are uneligible if you are
ineligible.
Suspended.
Okay.
You're ineligible.
So there you go.
Here's another pivot.
Okay.
Here's another pivot as you were talking. I just looked it up. Can you give a second Ridley for Mike Evans? Right? Can you do? Instead of paying a first, can you do that? Right? Because here's the deal: you're gonna kind of be the same situation with Mattison and with that pick, right? Because you're gonna sort of be like, all right, well now instead of, right, I've got a roster fodder-ish type player, right? I mean, is that let's just put a name to it. Is that Christian Watson, right? Is that a receiver like that? And then I'm carrying a similar asset where it's like I can't really use it at 112 if I'm sort of, and I've got
But
Mattison.
112, if you have 107, how high does that get you?
That's fair.
So you may have options like or 112 for a 23 first.
Right. But can you do that with Ridley as well? Right. That would be the challenge that I would say to you. Can you give Ridley in 107 to move up? Right. Can you use him that way? Given how close you are to the event actually happening, I would suspect that you haven't explored enough options yet. Right. If this deal's there right now, I think spend a little bit of time thinking about how I can make other moves along the way. And I think that there might be other opportunities, but you can't say, listen, I'm going to hold out and then bail in July, right? You have to sort of understand if you have the stomach for it, because the roster construction, I didn't realize when you read this that it was FFPC. The roster construction deal is real. I was talking about in 28-man Superflex today, Ridley's going to hurt, right? Because you got tight end premium stuff, you got all that stuff. Like, it's not going to be great, right? And if you get a couple other injuries, and all of a sudden you're really at a deficit in terms of roster construction. Those things are things you have to consider, but I wouldn't just bail right now. Think about ways that you can potentially add to Ridley to get a piece that can help you, and that's how I would do it.
Okay. Last quick one: 12-team Superflex, Kirk Cousins for 103.
Isn't this? It probably helps your lineup right now, right? And you're probably
it's definitely a boost to your lineup. Yeah. Well, here's the thing: 103 in Superflex, you probably miss out on Malik Willis, right?
You probably do. And you said if this is FFPC?
No, it's just stock.
Just stock.
Yeah.
I think you can probably trade.
Can you get a better quarterback though? Like we're in the Kirk Cousins business, but 103 should be able to get you places, right? I mean,
right.
I'm a little surprised.
Right. I mean, heck, you could trade it for Watson, right? I mean, I've seen that.
Does that get you Watson, Stafford? Right. Does that get you Aaron Rodgers, which provides more upside for the next, shorter range?
And we like Cousins too.
We're higher on Cousins than most people out there. I'm just a little surprised that it's not 105, 106, 107 that gets Cousins,
right,
or whatever. I mean, does 103 and maybe a little bit more get you Russell Wilson? I just think there's a lot of options, and Cousins is sort of like he's in that Derek Carr that doesn't get a lot of respect. Matt Ryan from 12 to 18 months ago, just he's in that bucket. And I'm just really surprised that if you're going hunting for quarterbacks with 103, this is what you settled on. Or if you were talking with, we say this all the time, you're just talking with that one team. And it's like, well, I got 103 and 203, so I guess I had to give 103 for Cousins.
Right.
No, there's other things there's other quarterbacks and there's other ways to do it. So,
right. By the way, I'm in a draft right now. Malik Willis went 20 overall. So
101.
Right. Yeah.
You just said 101 is 20 overall. So there you go.
20 overall. So
wow. So it's getting hot in here.
Right.
Malik Willis.
It's early March. We still got.
What was that? Was that QB? Was that top 10 QBs?
No. 12, it was actually
13?
like it was mid-teens. I mean, it's a
QB heavy draft.
Yeah, it was very heavy early. Yeah,
very heavy.
Very, very heavy. I got to the point it was mid-second, and I was like, all right, I can either take Watson at like quarterback, like I think he was at quarterback 12, yeah, at 206, and then Willis went
wow.
Yeah, Willis was quarterback 14 right behind Trevor Lawrence.
Is it a point per Liberty league or? All right. So we got quotes from the Dynasty Forum this week, and from the Don't Become Your Parents playbook, we've got Don't buy anything. I pack so many delicious snacks. That's straight out of my playbook. I guess I'm my parents already, because this is actually one of the taglines when I was dating the missus. One of the more I guess nerdy things I did is it was always with with her family. I would have a bag of nuts in my pocket. If there was almonds,
were there Werthers in them too?
Raw pistachios, exactly. I have a little toothpick. I have a toothpick for when I'm done eating my raw nuts. And but yeah, always a bag of nuts because it satiates you. And it's like, well, what if I get stuck? What if I get stuck at a parade and I can't leave for 2 hours and I'm getting hangry and all this stuff? So apple slices and, string cheese, a rogue string cheese or better cheddars, or
Yeah,
like
you
you
can't
said,
fall
worth
out,
it.
right? What does it fall out where you pass out when you're standing up in the middle of a
Very
similar
good. It
formation?
is fall out.
I saw that happen to someone, and I was like,
Oh, it's scary stuff.
Yeah.
I fell out twice in my 12 plus year military ceremonial career. One of the
out
times,
cold? Were you out cold?
here's the funny thing. One of them was while I was marching. So you stand for a heck of a long time, and then you just instantly, at some point in time, are thrust into marching. And we were doing all this, very sharp movements. And so you basically you march up, and then you make this like 90-degree like arcing turn. And I started to turn. And here's the thing, like you really, if you've never been in this mental state, you don't know. But it's hard to say it, but your vision just goes all wonky. Like, you remember the guy in Mr. Deeds where he's got crazy eyes? Like, you kind of feel like you can't focus. Like, it's all blurry. And again, you're overheating. Your brain is at 106 degrees, or like you're just not processing. And you know what to do. You can see these things happening. So in my head, I was making this right turn, this right arcing thing. And everyone told me, there's no video, but it's like everyone told me instead of right, I was actually going left. So I was actually doing like that big arc to the left. And one of the guys behind me just had to grab me. Like, I was just walking out to nowhere. Like,
wow.
So that was one of the times. So technically I didn't fall down and go unconscious, but you could basically say I was highly mentally compromised. So that was one of them. The other one was not even, it didn't technically count because we had performed something. We were waiting and some guy was giving a speech. We were in this classroom after the fact. And I was in the back of this room. We're dressed in like 3 layers of wool. We're all buttoned up. Like, everything's super hot. This room, I swear to God, was like grandma's house. It was 85 plus degrees. You're just dripping with sweat. And somebody's talking on and on and on. And I literally just collapsed in the back of the audience. And we were just sitting there standing. I just dropped like a sack of potatoes. So that one wasn't even in the line of anything. So neither time I technically, letter of the law, just collapsed. But when you see this scary stuff of someone just like a board falling, I mean, you can break your face. You can break, you can crack your skull or something. It's dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
So
we were at Army Navy, and they were marching, and the guy just, and it's scary because like you don't protect yourself, right? Like, I mean, when you fall,
you go limp, you're unconscious.
Totally.
There's no arms in the equation to prop you up. And honestly, they test people, and it sounds funsy because it's like, oh, you do a 20-minute standing test where you don't move. You just stand there for 20 minutes. And it sounds like pretty elementary. And to be fair, it is. But you'd be surprised how many people don't pass that. But you go all the way up to 75-minute standing test, which is, that's about as extreme as you would ever see in any job that you were to perform. So wild. Yeah. But until you get that feeling in your head where you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Like you better have some mental exercises to get yourself out of that thing.
Yeah.
All right. In FFPC, I'd value Ridley at about a 4th at best due to the value of roster spots.
Yeah, and when we were talking about that, I didn't realize that was a problem. So that is a problem. But again, I think that there's a chance that he makes, that he's a better asset for you than probably people in that range. I mean, again, if you're going to
churned waiver wire spot over the course of 8 months.
Yeah. Again, if you want to do it now, I don't have a problem with that deal. The construct of that deal, I might think of other ways to do it right now. See if there's other buyers for him right now in different ways. But I think if you have the stomach to hold, you can use him along the line and maybe take a shot at a more elite player.
And last one, limit your response to 10 minutes. If you have a pick early, you pick running back. This is referencing rookie drafts. It's easier, sure, to build for long-term around a wide receiver, but scarcity tells you you've got to go running back.
Oh God, I'm in pain. It is not easier to build long-term with wide receivers. That's a myth. And yeah, right. I mean, I actually did for AOD 2022. I did this. I just stripped out all the wide receivers and looked at the running backs in the first round of rookie drafts. And lo and behold, like the hit rate from the hit rate from the first round went from being like 55% up to like 62% just by taking out the wide receivers. Like you're just shooting at a bigger target, right? It's just a lot easier to hit it. And that's a big jump, right? If you could tell you like, hey, you can get 10 to 15% better, that's a big jump. And so I think, yeah. And I'll give you a perfect example, right? Today, just earlier today, I'm in a league, and this is the same league that was with, that I was discussing earlier. The picks are going off the board, and Christian Watson had like fallen. And I'm not huge in terms of making investments in rookie wide receivers, but Christian Watson was at pick 20. Of the rookies, right? When you stack them up. And I said, oh, okay, well, at that price, let's do this, right? And not right. And that's a way I think you can build depth and take a shot at youth instead of going up and taking, all right, I got to take Treylon Burks in like the 4th round, right? I took Watson in like the, I don't know, it was like the 14th, 13th, 12th, something like that. That's a very different price. And when you look at those profiles, over time, they've performed randomly, assuming that Watson gets in the first round. I'm not sure on that, but I think there's a chance of that happening. And, if that happens, like I saw him today projected at PFF had him projected at 30 to Kansas City. I think that's a rocket ship going up if that were to happen, so that's those sorts of things. I think you can take selective shots on trying to build some of that depth. I mean, you look at guys that have been successful, Tony, Aiyuk, right? Later on, Waddle wasn't one of the high priority first round wide receivers coming out. Guys like Bateman were going ahead of him, right? So you can take shots later on in your rookie drafts on these first round guys that I think, Justin Jefferson, right? Over and over and over again, you can wait on the first round wide receivers and take them later, and they're pretty good bets. So I would do that, right? But you're wasting, again, rookie classes are only as good as the running backs are. And, if it's super flex, how many top 10 quarterbacks you have. Other than that, right, you shouldn't be taking wide receivers early. Like I'll never, a firm rule for me is I'll never trade up for a wide receiver in a rookie draft to, up in the draft, like in the first round, right? If it's to stop a tier break or something later on, that's maybe a different story, but never up in the first round for a wide receiver, just because we're not very good at sorting them out. And, so that would be the thing with this. And, they're not better bets long-term. They're better, they're just not. So,
and one thing I would say is you have two factors going at each other, because guess what? You go early or earlier in the first round by the NFL, you typically are going to get paired with weaker quarterbacks.
Yes.
And or weaker franchises, more unstable situations. And then so you could be a perceived better player and you go to a worse situation, and the situational effect, the situational and historic part on level of quarterback definitely tempers the upside, the probabilities of being a top end fantasy wide receiver. So that is, you cannot argue with that in terms of situational factors. So if you get to the late first, you're typically going to a stronger quarterback, stronger infrastructure, team that made the playoffs last year, all these more positive things. And what if in short order you end up being the wide receiver one, fireworks and through the roof, rocket ship. So it's interesting because you could be viewed as the 5th wide receiver in the class, but yet, well, I went to one of the best quarterbacks and best teams in the NFL. So screw you guys, I'm going home. It's like that mentality, but because it's like if some guy goes top 10, they may not have a quarterback and they may be floating in the weeds now, but also very quickly, even if they have a bridge guy. So that's the interesting thing. It's almost like the two lines cross where it's like, okay, better player, worse situation. And then, worse situation, better situation and worse player. But like you said, they're all first round. And really, you got to get really high. You've got to get like Jamar Chase, top 5 type level, to really say I'm in a different tier as a wide receiver. I'm viewed as one of the best players in my draft and pretty much throughout the process, and then you get to other wide receivers. So it's like, oh, well, I went 14, I went 19, I went 23. It's like this roll call. And well, who's to say? I mean, it's just giant hodgepodge of what NFL teams prefer. But I bet almost all of them last year was like, oh, well, Jamar Chase, we prefer you. You know, like we would pick you if we were up there, but we're not. But these other classes where I remember the one that was it Corey Coleman, Will Fuller, Laquan Treadwell, and Josh Doxson. I mean, they go all pretty close. Who knows? Especially in that scenario. But even what you're saying is like back half of round one, top last 18, 20 picks. Who knows? And that's why the theory is, well, who's cheaper? Who's cheaper? Is someone egregiously cheaper, or is someone just, I'll just sit there and wait? And like you said, the theory of don't trade up is probably the biggest moniker.
Right. I made that mistake. I'll never do that again.
Who'd you trade up for?
Corey Davis.
You traded up for Corey Davis?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Corey Davis
he was an all-timer, right? But that's the point.
He was.
Right? That is the
point.
Well,
he went very high. Well, at least he went very high, right?
He did. But I mean, he checked every single box that you would say, like, all right, like if you're going to do it, you do it.
He also checked the smaller school box. So
Christian Watson got to be worried about that, right? There's not very many of those non-Power 5 guys that have gone in the first round.
See, now it makes sense. You were asking all these Christian Watson questions via text.
Well, I think he could get first round pedigree. I think that's in his range.
Well, it's a non-zero probability. Right. I mean, I still think it's not very likely, but he certainly is a quote unquote riser. So
yeah,
don't put anything past him.
Over under 5.5 wide receivers drafted in the first round of the NFL draft this year.
It's a good number. I think it'll be at least 5. So yeah, I mean, the 5th guy, I mean, based on looking at this, I think George Pickens has to be a first rounder, where the workout was kind of his question and he aced it. So he was viewed as wide receiver 1 of this class, if you go back a couple of years. And so you're basically asking with the 5.5, I mean, is it Chris Olave or, like you said, Christian Watson, Jahan Dotson? You got 2 or 3 kind of peripheral guys in projections, and you just need 1. So
yeah,
I think over is a good one.
Grinding the Mocks has Burt, and he's going to update it. I think it updates later this week. Okay, it's still not. He's not running it every day. Yeah. But yeah, it starts running more frequently. But he's got Treylon Burks, Drake, Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, and then Chris Olave all in right now. So that's 5. Yeah, that's Jahan Dotson just out, and then Pickens, Watson sort of mid-second. So it'll be interesting to see how that moves.
I think the over on the 5.5 is probably pretty, the odds-on play there.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. What's the do you have any? I mean, 30 seconds. Do you think Justin Ross is going to be like day 2? You think that's fair?
Probably. If he's not, that's a pretty darn big red flag. The more I've been reading about, the more I've been reading about his medical. 2 fusions, that is, 1 is workable and it might be career shortening. Multiple can be a big kind of hairy, scary situation. So that would be the thing. And I really I did factor that into my rookie rankings post combine of just, we didn't see a workout from him. We haven't heard much of a peep. I'm sure some teams are going to medically disregard or downgrade him more than others. It's a big competitive group of wide receivers. So to say you're going to take that shot at like 60 overall when it's been multiple years since he's really played well, I don't know.
Could he be baby Diggs? In terms of that same profile of like good early injuries hampered his career, he goes early day.
Well, Diggs was superior, I will say. I mean, Diggs had a lot better things than Justin Ross going on, and I know he faded all the way to round 5. Right. But the no medical part is probably the biggest part. Diggs was a 5-star guy. I don't even think Justin Ross was that high. Okay. Diggs is the scenario that, like, will we ever see it again? Right. That's the thing. I mean, it should have been such a, and please don't tell me it was a Jeff Janis year. If that was the Jeff Janis year, I'm just gonna throw up on something. Sitting there like the fourth round, you're like, yeah, I'm not even considering Stephon Diggs. I'm gonna go for Jeff Janis. He's wide receiver 6 with Aaron Rodgers. What can go wrong?
Janis was 14, and Diggs was 15.
Okay, thank God. Yeah. I feel better. I can sleep at night. Whew. I need to go eat a delicious snack. That's what I need to do.
Get some Werthers. You got this.
Exactly. Those aren't that good, by the way.
No, they're not.
Those aren't that good. I got a question. Are they all individually wrapped, or is there like that big bulk bag at grandma's house that was like they were all stuck together in like some giant Werther original?
I think they're bagged. There was an attorney that I had that I run into that would have them. Yeah, and she'd give them out. Like it was like a cartoon comedy. Yeah.
By the way, I appreciate restaurants so much more when they have the peppermint,
Mhm.
circular mints that
Mhm.
are individually wrapped at the front. Chef's kiss. So
Right on
good.
the way out. Yeah.
Exactly, right on the way out. But I am like a 60-year-old man. Toothpick every time. I'm just looking around. Where's that toothpick? I can get all this stuff out of my teeth by the car. That's the rule, though. I can get the toothpick, but I cannot bring it into the car. Because it's pretty messy. It's like flicking like a toothbrush everywhere.
Right. Right.
All right. See, a lot of people were going to focus on Aaron Rodgers this week. We focused on
toothpick etiquette.
snacks, passing out, Werther's Original, and toothpicks. That's how we chose to allocate our time.
Sorry, Joe.
Noted. Sorry, Joe. I will say this. Shout out to Cecil Lammy, because I had an alt podcast, and one of the questions was, if you had to change your name, what would you change it to? And I'm horrible with these types of questions. So after 2 minutes of berating, I just splurted out Cecil. So apparently now my nickname is Cecil for anyone that asks, or Cease. Do you have an answer to that question? If you had to change your name today? See,
I don't.
It's hard. You don't. I don't. Oh God. Well, you're like, that's available now because you're Cecil. So 2 Cecils. All right. I didn't mention one alibi for me earlier was, we talked about the news that came out in seemingly 3 hours today of 2 weeks worth. And you need to get up to date with all of it. The Football Guys daily email update. You can subscribe to the list. About 500,000 people, your league mates all included, are signed up for that list. All the news you need, some short-term analysis. You're going to get links to articles. And as we go through this draft process and trades, NFL free agency, you're going to want to be up on the instant feedback of footballguys.com. So make sure you sign up to that daily email update over there at the top right of the homepage. It says free email update. You cannot miss it from Joe Bryant.
And Joe's highlighting articles that we've got going on over there too. And I've just wrote 2 of them. So, and I got a whole series coming out on free agents too. So keep looking at the site, because we have articles and content coming out.
And in the chat, Jeremy also aptly puts out that we skipped the combine. So we'll get to it. Jordan's drafting Christian Watson. So obviously he is up on the combine and tracking it as well. So in this episode, we discussed Russell Wilson. We discussed a lot of macro points about maybe trading 101, trading Jerry Jeudy, the fallout there. Also, Calvin Ridley, picks in general. Cam Akers, possibly one that's been in decline a little bit in recent weeks here, and Superflex quarterbacks, of course, on our mind as that format continues to take a stronghold in the Dynasty population there. I am Chad Parsons. He is Jordan McNamara. And until next time, good luck in your Dynasty leagues.